Norwegian Burzum is one of the most respected black metal bands of all time, or at least the second wave of Nordic black metal, and for a good reason. The amount of good albums, not to mention some questionable acts and talks over the net, has been, kind of getting the kind of attention that most bands just dream of. But in this video we're not gonna talk about Burzum as a band or artist that much as a classic album that we have here. Here's my copy of Det Som Engang Var. This is a release by Misanthropy Records, Amazon 002 and Simofine Productions I001. So as you can see, almost breaking apart type of digipack, which I got a long time ago. Not very good condition, but it has served me well throughout the years. So this is how it looks in 2018, even though this release is from 1993. And the reason why I decided to pick this one for the classic album of August 2018 is that this album actually celebrated its 25th birthday like a week before of making this video. So kind of a fitting date for the particular album. Now, most of you already know what Burzum is all about as a band, and I know that this is their second full-length album, so I'm not gonna talk about that much about history, but this actual record and how it does sound in my ears now that we are living in 2018. It's kind of a given that when we all were younger, new albums, new bands, they just sounded so fresh, everything was different, and basically every band that you got to listen to was pioneering the genre and so forth. Well, things have changed a lot since 70s, 80s and 90s, and nowadays it's kind of hard for any album to make such an impact on ourselves than it was in the past decades. As it seems, sometimes albums get better by the years and sometimes they get worse. Some albums obviously kind of stand there in the middle, not so much changing, within our minds. Now, Burzum and I have a kind of a strong bond when it comes to music, and I could say it has inspired me musically and whatnot. And I've also kind of valued and treasured the fact that it has stood, but not only the test of time, but also musically being quite of a different from so many other Nordic bands or black metal in general. Now, this album was really actually recorded sometime in 1992, but released like a year later, which is a kind of a typical, time that it takes to from the recording sessions to recording and all that stuff and get released. And that was also the time when this kind of a second wave black metal wasn't that much, set in stone, how it was going to be sounding in the years to come and how it was going to change the world when it comes to this particular form of extreme metal. Now, 1992, black metal's second wave was kind of just in its childhood phase. And as such, Det Som Engang Var is very different to many other albums that were to come out in next 2 or 3 years after this one. By 1993, Norwegian black metal was already quite strong, but still there were many albums and many bands to come out later. And Burzum's view of creating music was already kind of honed by this album, because 1991 and 1992 were very active years when it comes to Mr. Vari Vikernes' music, creating riffs that were not so common in black metal, never actually that common. And Det Som Engang Var is very diverse album. There's lots of elements that wouldn't be that much of a black metal if we were to choose how to see black metal nowadays. What I'm trying to say here that many of these compositions on this album are not the type of songs you might be ending up hearing on a black metal album. Some of these riffs are just plain kind of weird or not just as very strong. And also they are very moody, kind of atmospheric. One could even say a little bit sissy. I mean, there is not so much aggression on Det Som Engang Var. There's not so much violence, darkness, and all that stuff. But then again, Burzum has always been, I want to underline this, always been more about myths, divine things, these god stories, as a through the Viking mythology. Also, role-playing games have influenced the band so much. So by no means this is something you can just easily compare to bands like, Marduk or Mayhem, Immortal, Dark Throne, or even Enslave, which was also very much, or still is to this day, very much, dealing with the similar topics. Now, for example, if we take a look, before talking about more in the music, if we take a look on this cover, this is actually a kind of a remake of a advanced Dungeons and Dragons adventure module called Temple of Elemental Evil. If you Google it up, I won't be adding here for whatever copyright reasons. If you Google it up, you will find that the kind of the same idea is here as it is there. This is just your girlfriend trying to create a different version of the cover type of thing. I mean, I kind of like this. This is very much the typical 1990s era. For example, look at Saturicon's debut album, and you can kind of find a similar kind of a crappy vibe. But of course, this is way better quality. But when you compare it to this Temple of Elemental Evil, this has absolutely nothing in comparison to give. But that doesn't take anything away from the music, the feeling, the atmosphere that is just there, right there, with Burzum's recordings, and some of the greatest riffs there are just to be found there. However, I think this is not as good as the debut album, nor not as good as Philosophem or this Lysetar Oz, because I think this is something where Weakness wanted to kind of experiment a little more. In some ways, this is less a kind of a typical black metal album, and in some ways it's a step in kind of a micro evolution of black metal. So all in all, I am now, after so many years, I'm a little undecided how and what to think of this album in general. I mean, it's good. The sound, the production here is very good. I love the guitar sound. It's just awesome. And Vikernes' way of, doing the black metal lyrics is just great. He's, I think, still one of the unique guys, how to actually, one of the most personal guys, to do the vocals. Some of his riffs are just great, while some are just, even in this 39 minutes of an album, some of them make very little sense, or maybe they make sense, but they are not very good in this album. And then there are just some songs which are, in some parts, they are just awesome, and at some points they are not that great. For example, the second last track, I don't know, actually, never got to idea how to pronounce Norwegian, but this Snog Mikrokosmos Tegen, being it like 9 minutes, it's just like filled with more mediocre parts as well as great ideas. Of course, this is just my opinion, and you might be totally disagree and give me a thumbs up just because of this comment. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say here is Burzum, even at its weakest, when it was creating black metal, it is good. I'm not much fan of his these synth and keyboards albums. The ones that were like in the prison time in late 90s, or the ones that was created in 2000 something. But the black metal elements, all the albums that have Burzum going black metal, they are just good as any, and I have no reason why not to keep this in my collection and come back to that maybe in a few years again. But anyway, I urge you to check out if you never ever have checked Burzum's album, and forget that all that political crap, it wasn't present in Burzum 1992. That was all about as through role-playing games, fantasy, myths, and all that stuff. Take it as you will. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for watching this classic review by Rauta. See you soon with more reviews to come. Cheers!